Question number 8 of Secunda Secundae is about the gift of understanding, and a couple of things before we get started. And there are quite a few articles in this question, so this one will take a little bit of time, but it's well worth it, especially the first article. If nothing else, I know not everybody can hang around for the entire video, but at least listen to the first article because it's just golden. And it's so important in understanding the entire theme of the Summa Theologia. But what you'll see is, we're in the treatise on the theological virtues, and right now we're treating on the theological virtue of faith, which is the first, not the most important, but it is the first of the theological virtues. And what Thomas is doing now is he is going to assign particular gifts of the Holy Spirit, understanding now, and then the next video, knowledge. He's also going to attach fruits of the Holy Spirit and also beatitudes. So you're going to see how the virtues, the gifts of the Holy Spirit, the fruits of the Holy Spirit, and the beatitudes all kind of work together. So let me get to the first article, and this is really, really important. I've read this, probably 10 times, and it just continues to really, really impress me. And it says whether understanding is a gift of the Holy Spirit. Now, the gifts of the Holy Spirit are probably something you should commit to memory. Wisdom, understanding, counsel, knowledge, fortitude, fear of the Lord, and piety. And this is one of them, clearly. So we know the answer is yes, but he says understanding implies an intimate knowledge. It's the same as intus legere, which is Latin, to read inwardly. Okay, he says, this is clear to anyone who considers the difference between intellect and sense, because sensitive knowledge is concerned with external sensible qualities, whereas intellective knowledge penetrates into the very essence of a thing, because the object of the intellect is what a thing is, as stated by Aristotle. Okay, so let's just stop right there. So let's say you look at something like a watch, right, that I'm holding in my hand here. The senses, with our eyes and touch, we see the outward appearance, but the intellect is able to abstract the phantasm, right? We're able to kind of grasp the essence of it. So that's what he's getting at here, but it's in a supernatural sense, because the gifts of the Holy Spirit are supernatural, right? So as we go about our lives and we're able to really penetrate into the meaning of things, this is what this is about, and this is really important. And so he goes on and says, now there are many kinds of things that are hidden within, to find which human knowledge has to penetrate within, so to speak. Thus, under the accidents lies hidden the nature of the substantial reality under words. Okay, this is Thomas being a realist as opposed to a nominalist, which didn't come until a century after him. Okay, under words lie hidden their meaning. Under likenesses and figures, the truth they denote lies hidden. Because the intelligible word is enclosed within as compared with the sensible word, which is perceived externally, and effects lie hidden in their causes. Okay, this is going to play out with the empiricists like David Hume, where he says causes cannot be seen. He denied, any kind of knowledge of causes. So this is really rich. And then he says, hence we may speak of understanding with regard to all these things. So understanding, this gift, penetrates into the deep understanding of things, okay? Penetration, it's very important. Most of us go through our lives and we don't really pay attention to what's out there. Since, however, human knowledge begins with the outside of things, as it were, it is evident that the stronger the light of the understanding, the further can it penetrate into the heart of things. Now, the natural light of our understanding is of finite power, wherefore it can reach to a certain fixed point. Consequently, man needs a supernatural light in order to penetrate further still into things, so as to know what it cannot know by the natural light. And this supernatural light, which is bestowed on man, is called the gift of understanding. I know you probably are hearing this for the first time, but that is so rich. Go online, look up the Summa, and look up this Article 1 of this, is it 8th question of the 8th question of Secunda Secunda. That is so rich. I wish I could spend more time on it, but we're going to have to move on. Article 2, whether the gift of understanding is compatible with faith. Now think about it. If we have infused faith, why do we need the gift of understanding? How are the two compatible with each other, or are they doing like the same thing? Okay, that's what he's saying here. He says, on the side of faith, the distinction to be made is that certain things of themselves come directly under faith, such as the mystery of the three persons in one God and the incarnation of the Son of God the Son, whereas other things come under faith through being subordinate in one way or another. Okay, so this has to do with formal and material parts of faith, which we learned in the first question of this, so hopefully you watched that video, right? On the part of understanding, the distinction is observed is that there are two ways in which we may come to understand. In one way, we understand a thing perfectly when we arrive at knowing the essence of the thing we understand and the very truth considered in itself of the proportion understood. In this way, so long as the state of faith lasts, we cannot understand those things which are the direct object of faith, okay? So if there's faith about things supernatural, and faith is, through the infusion of faith, is, remember, moving us to believe, and then through an act of our intellect, aided by our will, we come to believe this. He's saying, in that case, faith is kind of doing the work, and we don't need understanding, right? He says, in another way, we understand a thing imperfectly, when the essence of a thing or the truth of a proposition is not known as to its quiddity or mode of being, and yet we know that whatever be the outward appearances, they do not contradict the truth, insofar as we understand that we ought not to depart from matters of faith. So the bottom line here is that under some circumstances, faith does the job and understanding isn't needed, but under other circumstances, we do need understanding in addition to faith. But if nothing else, it's a fascinating question to ask ourselves about those two working together, because they're both supernatural. Okay, is the gift of understanding in all who are in a state of grace? Thomas, for this one, is going to say yes. If you're in a state of grace, that means you are well directed to your final end, which is God himself, which is beatitude. And so you're going to have this gift of understanding if you are in a state of grace. Article 5, whether the gift of understanding is found also in those who have not sanctifying grace. No, okay, no sanctifying grace, you're not going to have the gift of understanding, says Thomas. Whether the gift of understanding is distinct from the other gifts. This one I do want to share with you because I think it's really important. He says the difference between the gift of understanding and three of the others, that is piety, fortitude, and fear, is evident since the gift of understanding belongs to the cogitative power, while the other three belong to the appetitive power. Okay, so we're talking about the faculties of the human being. We have appetites, we have cognition, we have will, we have senses, we have passions, complicated creatures we are. But then he goes on and says the difference between the gift of understanding and the remaining three, which are wisdom, knowledge, and counsel, which also belong to the cognitive power, is not so evident. To some, it seems that the gift of understanding differs from the gifts of knowledge and counsel in that these two belong to practical knowledge, while the gift of understanding belongs to speculative knowledge. Now, do you remember that practical knowledge means having to do with operations or actions, whereas speculative has to do with the contemplation of truth. And that's the distinction that he's making here. Okay, so that it differs from the gift of wisdom, which also belongs to speculative knowledge, and that wisdom is concerned with judgment, while understanding renders the mind apt to grasp the things that are proposed. So he's not going to agree with this line of thinking. But what Thomas says, accordingly, on the part of things proposed to faith for belief, two things are requisite on our part. First, that they be penetrated or grasped by the intellect, and this belongs to the gift of understanding, right, which we're talking about. Secondly, it is necessary that man should judge these things aright, that he should esteem that he ought to adhere to these things, and to withdraw from their opposites. And this judgment with regard to divine things belongs to the gift of wisdom, but with regard to created things belongs to the gift of knowledge, and as to its application to individual actions belongs to the gift of counsel. All right, so wisdom, understanding, counsel, knowledge are all cognitive, having to do with the intellect. The other three, piety, fear of the Lord, and fortitude, have to do with the appetite. Okay, so I know probably not all of that sunk in, and it hasn't entirely sunk in with me either, but it's pretty interesting nonetheless. Article 7, now he's going to connect a beatitude. Okay, blessed are the clean of heart, responds to the gift of understanding. Now remember, if we're going to have the gift of understanding, that's penetration, okay, fully understanding something, even from a supernatural assistance to understand it. But the beatitude, the clean of heart, means that we have to get rid of everything else, okay, all the attachments, all of the the sin or the things that are going to block us from being able to penetrate into the meaning of things is going to be done away with this special beatitude of cleanliness of heart. Okay, whether faith among the fruits responds to the gift of understanding, he's going to here say, yes, faith is what responds to the gift of understanding. Remember, this is a fruit, and I do want to read just what he says here. The fruits of the Spirit are so called because they are something ultimate and delightful, produced in us by the power of the Holy Spirit. Now, the ultimate and delightful has the nature of an end, which is the proper object of the will, and consequently that which is ultimate and delightful with regard to the will must be, after a fashion, the fruit of all the other things that pertain to other powers. He's going to say that with regard to the intellect, it is faith. With regard to the will, it's joy. Okay, so we've experienced that fruit of joy. Okay, so those are the 8 articles of this 8th very important question of the Summa, the gift of understanding. I hope you enjoyed this as much as I enjoyed studying this. In the next video, we'll go through the gift of knowledge and how it differs from understanding. Okay, how is understanding different from knowledge? So I hope you'll join me for that, and thank you for joining me as we journey through the Summa, one question at a time.